4 minutes after 10 is the time. Where to start? Seriously, where to begin? Oh, I really should have gone to Birmingham, shouldn't I? Honestly. Well, what a missed opportunity that was. I was in the Midlands at the week and I was in Kidderminster on Saturday, but I didn't get the clearance in. Well, to be honest, I didn't develop an appetite for actually being there until rather late last week, as I told you. But it must be a remarkable experience. I met a lad on Friday night, who is a Conservative councillor in the London Borough of Hounslow. He was a lovely bloke. Didn't get too deep into politics or anything like that. Otherwise, perhaps I wouldn't have come away with such a warm impression. Very young. And he was off to conference for his first time. In fact, I also met the Labour leader of Hounslow Borough Council, who just got back from his first ever conference. Imagine two more different experiences for local politicians or politicians of any standing than that. This, as a Conservative, this would be your first ever conference. What impressions could you possibly be coming away with? Or last week, as a Labour politician or a Labour activist, that was your first ever conference, just sort of queuing up opinion poll leads that were about to smash through the mythical 30-point barrier. Incredible to reflect upon how quickly the world turns from, in 2019, the worst defeat for the Labour Party in pretty much a century, give or take a decade and a half, right through now to unprecedented poll leads, which of course do not translate into election victories. Far from it. There is a lot of water to pass under a lot of bridges before we get to cast our votes again. Although perhaps not quite as much water or quite as many bridges as we possibly expected this time last month. So when did we first start asking whether or not Boris Johnson was toast? I don't think we did. I think I covered Boris Johnson for so long, from his mayoralty right through to his premiership, to the dog days of his premiership, that the traditional question of is this over, is this curtains, actually transmogrified quite early into how does he keep getting away with it? It did, didn't it? We didn't do is Johnson finished? We did how does he keep getting away with it? How can someone who has ridden roughshod over all the norms and traditions, all the standards and expectations of high office, continue to transgress in such an egregious fashion without apparently any of it ever sticking to him? I think we started doing that before he'd even left City Hall in London, rather than doing the traditional political discussion about whether or not the writing is on the wall. Isn't it wonderful to hear Andrew Marr's dulcet tones on LBC talking there to Nick about the taking of soundings. We're taking soundings, and you can actually deliver the metaphorical revolver and the glass of scotch to a sitting Prime Minister and let them know that the writing is on the wall. They have lost the party. You'll remember, again, to draw contrast with Boris Johnson, that when it was suggested that the time had come for Boris Johnson to be handed a revolver and a glass of scotch, he'd probably shoot the person who handed him the revolver and then drink the scotch in celebration. But we seem to be at least tiptoeing towards normality in that sense, in the idea that no one's going to argue Liz Truss is Teflon. Teflon Truss is not a nickname I expect to be appearing anytime soon, and she has already lost the Daily Mail. Or at least the Daily Mail is teetering. The Daily Mail yesterday, and I know I do sometimes worry that you don't find all this stuff anywhere near as fascinating than I do. I am a son of a newspaper man, and I will have newsprint in my blood, I suspect, for the rest of my days. But to change the front page in one morning on the same day from a kind of, yes, we will stand firm, to, oh my days, there's going to be a U-turn. That will have really hurt the incredibly overdeveloped egos on the Daily Mail's editorial floor, because they have made the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph and their commentators look even stupider than they make themselves look on a daily basis. And that, I have to tell you, is an astonishing achievement. Imagine taking someone who routinely appears on the Daily Telegraph's comment pages, like Frost, for example, and making him look even stupider than he makes himself look on a daily basis. That's quite incredible. The Daily Mail adamant at midnight yesterday. Is it midnight yesterday? Yeah, midnight today would be this morning, wouldn't it? And midnight yesterday would be yesterday. So at midnight yesterday, adamant that Kwasi Kwarteng was going to stand firm and that Liz Truss was not for turning. And then by the time the second edition of the newspaper came out, they'd had to wobble, they'd had to wibble, they'd had to reverse and reflect upon the U-turn that the government had undertaken.